Happy Friday, you guys. Happy Fridays with Fidelman. I'm Cheryl Fidelman, the Conscious Codependence Coach. Today's topic on Fridays with Fidelman is codependence and the self. I'm a little sick today, so I'm just gonna give this my own good old college try. All right, codependence and the self. We have a lot of new members of the Conscious Codependence community coming in the last few weeks. So for those of you who are new, when I do these Fridays with Fidelman towards the end of the month, it becomes the topic for our free and monthly class, which happens the last Wednesday of every month. So today's topic is codependence and the self, and our free and monthly class for the whole community is invited is on Wednesday on this very topic. So codependence and the self, for a lot of us, when we're in our codependent moments, it's hard for us to notice that we have an impact on a situation. It's often very easy for us to interpret what others are doing and what others mean and what other people are thinking and project into their world what's happening for them. It's easy for us to notice their emotional state and what we think they mean and how they may be impacting us. But we often completely overlook that we have an impact on the dynamic or the dialogue or the relationship in that current moment, in that specific moment, just as much as the other person or people do. It's hard for us to notice that we are the source of how things are going just as much as the other person or other people are sourcing how it's going. So we often, this is just another way of saying that we look outside of ourselves for the reality and for what's happening and for points of view and for power and for opinion more than we may weigh in our own reaction or self-expression or opinion. And that we are also, in service of the reality just as much as everybody else is. And we are generating our experience just as much as everybody else is impacting our experience. That's really ultimately what I want to say, that our experience is being generated from over here just as much as our experience is being impacted by others. And I really want to try to get this from every different angle, because a lot of us codependents, it's either as extreme as we don't have a self, or we simply get disassociated from self in certain moments and overlook how we may be just as much of a source of how things are happening as everybody else is. All right, so codependence and the self, free and monthly class on Wednesday. And all right, here we go. Codependence and the self. So if you recall my 3 tenets of conscious codependence, the want to be wanted, the need to be needed, and the need to prove oneself, anytime we are operating from one or more of these 3 tenets, we are moving away from ourselves, right? So the want to be wanted from another person, the need to be needed from another person, the need to prove ourselves in another person's eyes. We are operating from a place of trying to preserve belonging, safety, and or our identity through another person's eyes. You may have heard me say this idea a few times in my videos that we hear these phrases a lot in the healing world, like self-healing, self-love, self-awareness, right? While these are all really great and important phrases and ideas, for some of us, myself included, definitely earlier on in my codependence recovery, those are really nice phrases, but what if you don't have a self, right? Like I would hear those phrases and I would go, those are great phrases, but I don't have a self to point that awareness to, or a self to point that self-healing or self-love to. I couldn't locate that place over here within me that any of that would point to. It was hard for me to receive intimacy, to receive love, to receive help, to receive support, because I didn't have a sense of alignment and a sense of relationship with what was going on inside of me. So I didn't have a relationship with myself. Now, oftentimes what it takes for us to notice that we do have a phenomenon over here within ourselves going on called the self, sometimes what it takes is what I call flood, right? So we're moving along, we're not noticing ourselves, we're not noticing that we are actually impacting the world around us. We may simply just notice that the world around us is impacting us, until we go from 0 to 100, until we're completely flooded with emotion or sensation, or we're completely flooded with thought, or we're completely flooded with the sense of threat. And then we go, oh, I exist here. I have a phenomenon going on over here. Something's wrong over here. I'm overwhelmed. I'm threatened. I don't feel safe. And so a huge part of my work, Conscious Codependence Recovery, is the somatic healing element of it, where we start to slowly bring back all of the thoughts, sensations, and emotions that happen in between 0 to 100. So we're actually feeling consistently the phenomenon of life. We're consistently feeling our experience. We're consistently feeling stimulus and how we're reacting and what we're feeling and what we're thinking moment to moment. So we're feeling all there is to feel between 0 and 100, as opposed to simply 0 or 100, or what I call repress or release, or what I call disassociation or full association. When you find yourself talking about another person, for example, what they said, what they meant, what they're doing to you, what you think they're intentionally doing, what they left out, or how they're not understanding you, right? When you find yourself pointing the finger a lot at another person or group of people, but for this example, just use one person, right? They said this, they're acting like this, they're not noticing this, right? Every time you point to their actions or behaviors or words is an opportunity to equally point to yourself. Because most of the time, we are talking about or pointing out another person's behavior because we are having a feeling about it. Because we're having a reaction to it. If I'm saying this person didn't hear me, a way of saying it in my own experience is I'm not feeling heard. And so oftentimes we are having an experience, which is why we point out another person's behavior. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong about another person's behavior. You may be right about how they're acting and how they're being, but most of the time the reason why we're pointing our finger so much at another person is because we're having an experience about what's happening. And the more we practice noticing the phenomenon that's going on within us, the more we practice noticing our thoughts, sensations, and emotions, which is the fundamental practice of my conscious codependence work, which is called the TSC practice, thought, sensation, emotion, the more we practice our reaction to the stimulus. So other people, another person, our job, our environment, everything around us is stimulus. And so the more we notice how we're being stimulated and what's happening within us, not just somatically on a nervous system level, but also cognitively as well, and on a sensorial, I'll use the word sensorial, I'm not sure if I'm making that up, sensory, on a sensory level, the more we notice the phenomenon that's going on within us, the more we start to relate to ourselves as having a self that is actually impacting any given moment just as much as the moment and other people are impacting us. And this is how we practice our sovereignty, having an independent experience, being not so much in the victim state. In other words, like we are at the mercy of other people. We're not so much at the mercy of other people anymore when we are bringing our experience to the table. And most importantly, admitting to ourselves and noticing for ourselves what our experience is. We don't always have to say it. We can say it. That's a step in the process. But the first step in the process is always noticing what is going on over here. Because the more we notice other people, the more we become righteous, what I call righteous about our codependence. And that's another distinction of my work, is that codependence is righteous. that we see other people's personalities and we think we're right about what they mean. We think we're right about what they're doing to us. We think we're right about who they are. But then stick another person in the same conversation and they may have a completely different idea of what's happening and what's happening with that person. And so our righteousness is also a way of leaving ourselves, being right about another person, when really, ultimately, in our sovereignty, which is the North Star of any conscious codependence recovery journey, in our sovereignty, we practice simply being right about ourselves. Another way of saying that is standing in our truth. Another way of saying that is noticing our experience, that our experience actually becomes non-negotiable. Like nobody else can tell us what we're experiencing or what we should experience, or that we're not interpreting things accurately, that our experience, is this brightness? Is the brightness down? That our experience, we know it so well that it becomes non-negotiable for others, but most importantly for ourselves. Because another way in which we may overlook ourselves is we may go, oh, I'm having a feeling, but somebody else can so easily talk us out of that feeling that we go, okay, yeah, forget it. Like we may speak up, but so easily acquiesce to somebody else's opinion about how we should be thinking or feeling. So for some of us, it's not like we totally don't have a self. Not all of us are that extreme in our codependence. I used to be. It's like the way I remember it is I just really just had no self. And then as I started healing, I would speak up and notice my intuition and speak up about it, but then very easily be taken off, like give up what I just said. I would say what I thought and I felt, and somebody else would say, no, you don't really think that way, or that's not the right way to think. And I go, okay, you're right. No, forget it. Right. And so a big part of conscious codependence recovery is actually staying in our sovereignty moment by moment. Because we may have a sovereign moment where we notice ourselves, and then it's very tempting to then go, okay, forget it. I noticed my intuition, I noticed my thought, I noticed my feeling, I noticed my desire or preference, and I noticed it, I said it, now I'm going to set it aside. So a big part of sovereignty is to keep coming to the table with our truth and our feelings and our preferences and our opinions, and have it be non-negotiable with others, and most importantly, with ourselves. And the North Star of any conscious codependence recovery journey is knowing where you begin and end and where another person begins and ends. That each and every one of us is having an independent experience even when we're with another person. So if I'm having a conversation with you, it's likely there's a portion of my experience, of my conversation with you, that has nothing to do with you. It has to do with my history and my interpretations and my traumas and my identity and how I'm interpreting things. And there's a portion of the experience for you, for whoever I'm talking to, there's a portion of your experience that has nothing to do with me. And there's a portion of it that is interdependent. And the more we get to know ourselves, which is the number one most important person to get to know, a lot of us codependents are so good at getting to know what other people's facial expressions mean and what their tone means and what their emotional state is and what their mood is. We're so micro-focused on other people that we lose the micro-focus on our own experience. And I'm not talking about self-grandiosity. I'm talking about having accurate reflection and accurate alignment of our own inner world and the universe within us. And the more we get to know ourselves, actually the more intimate with others that we can be. Because the more we get to know ourselves, the more we see what we put in the space between us and other people. The more we get to know ourselves, the more we notice what we project, how we interpret. We get to know our relationship with intimacy. We get to know our relationship with safety, and what kind of energy we are bringing to the table. just as much as we are feeling the other person's energy that they're bringing to the table. You know, a lot of people, when they come to me, they're like, I didn't even realize that I was on autopilot and not connected to myself in this 10, 20, or 30-year marriage. I'm just awakening to myself and my own personality and what it is that I want. I didn't even realize that I was muted and living in somebody else's world and somebody else's reality, serving their world. I didn't even realize that that was happening. And, you know, we get locked out of ourselves as a traumatic response. Codependence is not you. It's not me. It's our automation. It's our traumatic identity. It's the identity that developed to survive our parents' or guardians' reality or the psychology of your holding environment as a child. Doesn't mean we're not responsible, right, for what we're doing or how we're being, but for a lot of us, we are locked out of ourselves, and it's an autopilot reaction to handle our safety. So once we get our safety handled, we can, you know, through my programs or whatever healing modality you choose, we can come back to who we truly are and find our voice and our feelings and our preference and be actually safe to surrender to our own experience and our own self. Okay, I can go on and on and on about codependence and the self, because bringing us back to ourselves is the North Star of codependence recovery. This is what I have 52 distinctions of my work in my private program, my couples program. I have a 2-month program, a 10-month program. So all of my programs are focused on a specific methodology and process that I developed to bring us back to the truest version of ourselves, to bring us back to our innate design. All right, so if you haven't already, feel free to go to CherylFidelman.com, put your email address in, and you'll get your free PDF which breaks down the developmental roots, common behavioral habits of my 3 tenets of conscious codependence. You'll also get a free 3-day video workshop, that 3 videos that also go deeper into those 3 tenets. I probably already have your email address if you're watching this email. So if you opt in and put your email address, you're not going to get double stuff from me. It's just the access to getting those free gifts. It's a new kind of setup that I have on CherylFidelman.com. And this Wednesday, 3 p.m. Pacific, free and monthly class, Conscious Codependence class on codependence and the self. The link is below. I'll also send you a separate email about that. Thank you again for listening to my thoughts, theories, and rants. Happy spring for those of you on this planet who it's springtime coming this weekend. And happy healing. Have a wonderful weekend. And life is now.